start our discussion today, let's take this background report put together by Abdusalam Ajibril.
Like a rumor, the news filtered through different social media platforms of an impending nationwide protest against the government of the day, setting panic among citizens. August 5th was the set day, and it was to be a protest and a revolution to be led by Omoyele Sowore, presidential candidate of the African Action Congress in the February 2019 general election. Nigerians, however, woke up to the news of his arrest by the Department of State Services on the count of threats to public safety, peaceful coexistence, and social harmony in the country.
Sowore is with us so that we can do the needful. DSS will not idle by, stand by, and watch people, self-serving people take laws into their hands. We will do all that is within the law to discharge our responsibility.
The Nigerian police also issued a statement warning against the planned protest and proposed revolution, and Sowore's political party has disassociated itself from the planned revolution, stating that the planned action is not initiated, supported, or sponsored by the party. His arrest, however, elicited divergent reactions from Nigerians from all walks of life. While many condemned the arrest, many others commend the security services for proactive steps taken towards ensuring peace in the country. While peaceful protest is legal and allowed under the Nigerian Constitution, Sowore's revolution now, many say, is an incitement for violent revolution and protest to effect a regime change.
Thank you, Abdusalam Jibril, for that background. We have with us in the studios 4 guests to discuss this issue in greater detail. First, let's welcome the Deputy Commissioner of Police, who is also the first Public Relations Officer, Frank Umba. DCP, pleasure to have you with us on the program again.
Thank
and
you
good morning,
much.
Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you. Also here with us in the studios, we have a public affairs commentator, Dominic Alancha. Alancha, delighted to have you with us on the Good Morning, Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We also have in the studio Professor Jide Ofo Adibe, Political Science Department, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined by Ayo Oyalowo, political economist. We're glad to have you in the house. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
All right, let's begin with the first Public Relations Officer, DCP Frank Umba. What is the situation report with regard to the planned protest by #RevolutionNow?
Generally across the country, the situation reports we got from field commanders, specifically the command commissioners of police, actually show that it was almost a total failure. I mean, in most states across the Federation, there was no single protest. There was no resemblance of protest. People went about their normal duties. Even in states like Kaduna, that we expected some form of threat. It was absolutely nothing at all happened, and a combination of the anticipated protests, the judicial trials going on, and Kaduna was very peaceful. Same with Kano, and same with almost all the states in the northern part of Nigeria. And in the southern part of Nigeria, almost the same story, except for Lagos, where a few persons came out, and then it was easily managed by the security, by the law enforcement officials, particularly the police, with the support of other agencies. And the states like Enugu, Anambra, the South is generally, it was a total failure. Same thing with the South-South, Port Harcourt, used to be seen as a hub of activities in the South-South. Nothing actually took place. Abuja, I mean, you could count the number of people that gathered at the National Human Rights Commission. You can count them on your fingertips. I think generally it is because Nigerians understood that revolution is different from a protest. And that's the point we made when we issued our statement. If people had said protest today, for us, we would have approached it differently. But the moment you use the word revolution, we began to look it from that prism. And we looked at the meaning of revolution, and for us, it simply means a forceful and violent change of government in that protest, in that context. And we needed to take proactive actions and make sure that such things don't happen, since this is a thriving democracy. We have said this repeatedly. We are not averse to citizens conducting peaceful protests. Nigerians are witnesses of the fact that a whole lot of protests have taken place in this country, and we had provided adequate and sufficient security for protesters. We had escorted them. We have watched their front, watched their back, and watched their sides to make sure that their ranks and files are not infiltrated, and seen them through such peaceful march. But when people ab initio make pronouncements that suggest ulterior motives, then we need to come in very quickly in the interest of the Republic. We've said it repeatedly: your right to protest, your right to freedom of expression, your right to freedom of assembly are all moderated by the Constitution. They are moderated by national security, but they are moderated by national defense, they are moderated by public health, public morality, and then the need to protect the rights of others.
Okay, thank you so much, DSP Frank Mba. I'll be coming to Professor GD Ofo. He has given his own definition from a security point of view. As a political scientist, it was a revolution, now a protest. Can you give us the distinctive difference between these two?
Well, revolution actually can mean, one version of it will be a forceful change of a regime, but it also means any radical change. In fact, if anything unusual happens, you can say it's revolutionary. There is an aphorism, for example, that in climes where telling lies, such as Nigeria, is pervasive, ability to tell the truth is revolutionary. It's a revolutionary act. I see the point. The government had to do what it had to do, but I am not too sure how to judge whether it was a success or a failure, because it depends on what was the intended objective of the people planning it. And there were a number of contending perspectives. For some people have claimed that it was a strategy by Sowore to make himself the symbol of opposition. That's one version, a contending perspective. Another one, you can call it conspiracy theory if you want. Another one says that, don't forget that Sowore was a big supporter of Buhari, and in fact, his political party was used in Rivers State election. It was the one used by Amechi in his struggle with Wike. And I don't think many people will regard Rotimi Amechi as a revolutionist. So according to that version, that theory, conspiracy theory, there was a sort of disagreement, something that was to be promised that was not delivered, and therefore Sowore decided to launch a revolution quote and unquote. And there's yet a third perspective, that it could possibly be something propped up by the government itself, that the government has been closely watching the developments at the election tribunals and is uncomfortable on which direction it might go, and therefore has used Sowore, who was his supporter, supported Rotimi Amechi, who is a part of the government. And therefore, it's a way of trying to set up a scenario and use it to legitimate clamping of oppositions. So I don't really know. These are contending perspectives. Until things evolve, we will not know which one is true. But one thing is certain. It is not, I think it will be a little simplistic to judge the success or failure on whether the rallies were held or not. Today, everybody's talking about Showore and revolution. Yesterday, almost all the newspapers had him on their front pages. He never got that kind of media attention before. So I'm not really sure, if you can say it failed. The fact that the police took the threat serious enough to mobilize across the country means that when you say it failed, you have to qualify it.
All right, thank you very much, Jidiofo. Let's bring in Dominic Alancha. What's your take on the planned protests and what played out?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, we really have to look at that word revolution. And that's what I believe that Nigerians should really begin to look at and interrogate. Revolution means rebellion sociologically. It means rebellion. It's a real world and historically important event whereby social and political orders are overturned, usually through violence means. There has not been any revolution, call it industrial revolution, whatever revolution, economic revolution, it has always been through a violence means. And it's political because it always connotes a political agenda. Now, Showore came out and categorically stated, it's in the media, you can investigate, you can research. Statement accredited to him where he said, I am not leading a protest. I am leading a revolution. He said that he is not leading a protest, he's leading a revolution, and that he's ready to die for it the way the Tunisian man ignited revolution in Tunisia and died for it. He went further to say that, and that's why I believe that, look, the police and the DSS should nip this on the bud. If they allow this thing go, without serving as a deterrent, a lot of persons tomorrow will wake up and name their own revolution, whatever, and then they will get, and unfortunately, the intelligentsia are supporting it. People like Mike Ezokome was on channels the other day defending revolution, that there is nothing wrong with it. It means revolt. He has said it. He's out to chase Buhari out of government. A man that contested election 6 months ago, I think he does not have the moral ground to lead a revolution.
Dominic Alancha, thanks. Just before we bring in Ayo, you said that revolution is always violent, but you have also heard sometimes of a velvet revolution.
Yes. Yeah, revolution is always violent. Like I said, it means rebellion. There is no way, whether economic revolution is about radical change. And there is, the word radical connotes violence, it connotes force. When you apply it that way, it's about violence. And Showore, like I said, he said in his video also that by Tuesday, there won't be anything called DSS. This has wiped out. That DSS will be wiped out. What was his intention? The agenda behind it is known. He wants to cause a chaos in the country where there won't be peace, and there is nothing that is as sacrosanct as peace in this country. We are enjoying peace today. We are here in this studio seated and discussing revolution today because there is peace. If there is no peace, we won't have the opportunity of coming here to discuss issues like this. So this is not issues that should be treated with kids' gloves. These are issues that the security agencies need to nip it on board so that it will serve as a deterrent to others. And for me, it's a treasonable offense because the law is very clear about it.
Frank Umba, DCP, is also a lawyer.
And you are also a lawyer.
No, I'm not a guest. I'm not a guest. I just needed us to. I needed you to clarify the concept of revolution. When you say it's always violent, that's why I brought in the aspect of velvet revolution. Because we have seen it. You can see the chair you are sitting on. The upholstery is a bit velvety. I'm not sure that it's
maroon.
It's pricking you. But Ayo Oyalowo, we're dealing with serious issues here. And there are a number of persons that have spoken. What, in your opinion, is playing out? Is it a case that, as Adebe indicated in one of his perspectives that he reeled out, that perhaps too much emphasis is being placed on just some linguistic inflation by a protester?
Well, It will be very risky to just think it's linguistics if you know the antecedent of the guy who purportedly is the leader. I mean, from his university days, he's always been someone who don't conform, typically. And I think you can't run for an election, lose the election woefully, I mean, maybe get less than 10,000 votes, and then you wake up and say you want to change the government. I think we have a system in place. We are a democracy. And if anybody is dissatisfied with the government, there are legitimate and democratic way to go about it. So for you to wake up and say you're going to lead a revolution, there will be no more DSS in the country, I think that becomes dangerous. Typically, if it was a protest, you will have an end game. If I wake up today and say I want to protest hike in school fees, everybody knows what is annoying me. If I wake up today and say I want to protest epileptic power supply, everybody knows what is bugging me. But when somebody comes and says it's a revolution, there is no end game in particular that you are chasing. It's just something misty. It's foggy. Then it's start to become dangerous, and it's a security issue, clearly. I wouldn't know if the security people handle it the way it should be handled, but I think it is not an ordinary thing. And I was hearing and reading so many theories that he received some monies from some foreign interest. So it means there is a plan, probably, to destabilize the government. And I think, like he rightly posited, peace is sacrosanct. We are sitting today in this studio because we are not fighting a war, because there is no chaos in the street. Assuming there is no peace, you can't sit here and talk. We will all be taking covers, hiding in bushes and bunkers, so as not to get caught in the crossfire. So if anyone is dissatisfied with anything in the country, there are two legitimate ways to go about it. Either you wait for another election and present yourself so that you be a candidate and maybe win, or you go to court and make your case. Or the other way is you protest and say, these are my legitimate grounds against this and this and this, and this is what I expect to be done. But when you are not giving this kind of situation, you're not saying, this is what we are protesting against, this is what we want to take, then it is not a protest. It is a form of dissatisfaction because you lost an election and you thought you are more important than you actually are in reality. You think you can push and make life difficult for the rest of us. I want to have peace. If you want problems, people should just go and look for their problems elsewhere. They shouldn't bring their problem here. As an economist and as a normal citizen, I want to be able to wake up, do what I want to do, go back home in peace, without somebody who doesn't have anything to do or to lose in this country coming to create problem for us. Many of these guys have taken their families away from Nigeria. They want to create chaos here and then run away. We all remember the other IPOB guy after he had created all the problem. Now he has run away. So many people are still suffering for the problem he created for them. So typically, guys just get money from somewhere, come around, create problem and run away, and leave the rest of us here who don't have other passports to suffer the consequence of their actions.
What will happen to the economy of this country if this continues?
Exactly. If this happens, we will not be able to have the businesses that are running today, the Nigeria Stock Exchange that is running, banks, and every other thing running normally. We are sitting there, I'm sure by 2 o'clock, the stock exchange will close. We'll look at who made losses, who made gains and stuff. But if these things don't happen, you won't have that. I mean, if these problems or chaos that these guys are trying to create starts or happens, that will not happen. The investors will not come. Just last week, we have been talking about the rural electrification project that is taking place currently. So several campuses are being connected without the grid. Because I remember there was a time I was in one of your studios here, and I was saying that for us to have an electrical breakthrough in this country, we must begin to look at off-grid solution because of our weak infrastructure in terms of the national grid. And fortunately, that has been taken into consideration. campuses, markets, and some other projects, some other rural projects are giving electricity right now, off-grid solution. So we are having an economic boom gradually. But if somebody comes in and creates chaos, the setback for us will be too massive to imagine, let alone experience.
All right, thank you very much, Ayo. DCP Frank Umba, I'm returning to you now. But earlier you gave the situation report as to what transpired yesterday. But of course, there have also been a number of media accounts of what happened, including amateur videos that were played on a number of stations with regard to the way the security agencies handled some of the protests, in particular in Lagos and Osun states. In Lagos, there were instances of journalists who were arrested. I just want to ask a question. In relation to this, why is it that when journalists are on their legitimate assignments, law enforcement agents, in particular the police, tend to brutalize them?
Kingsley, this is the journalism in you. Not just creeping up or surging out very strongly now. Well, if we're out against journalists, then obviously we would have lots and lots of them behind bars. Because even in some of the places where there were things that look like protest, the number of journalists that even covered the protesters were more than the protesters. And yet those journalists had absolute freedom to do their job. But we saw cases, for example, in Calabar, where we picked up a staff of Nation newspaper. He was unfortunately embedded among the protesters. And even as at the time he was picked up, he had nothing on him to identify him as a journalist. It took a whole lot of time, including calls from myself to the Commissioner of Police in charge of Cross River State to positively identify him after clarification from his head office before he was eventually released. In Lagos, where one of the staff of Sarah Reporters was picked up, he was also part and parcel of the protest. And he had nothing to identify himself as a journalist. If you see cameramen, for example, NTA, your cameras are flagged. I probably don't know the technical word, but I know your cameras are flagged. And so, I mean, your mics are flagged. Sometimes we see NTA camera people wearing the NTA jacket on top of their uniform. So clearly, you could see them, you will identify them, you know this person is a journalist. We've also seen in other climes where if journalists are covering situations like this, they also wear jackets boldly written or boldly inscribed press. And so, if you go ahead to arrest such person, it will be a clear departure from what we expected to do. But when a journalist surreptitiously gets himself or herself embedded with the protesters without any means of identification and begin to conduct himself not as a person covering the event, but as a protester, then we will treat the person as a protester. If he begins to conduct himself as a rioter, rather than someone who is actually covering the riots, then he will be treated as a rioter. And that's the scenario. In Lagos, the person that was picked didn't conduct himself like a journalist. He conducted himself not even like a protester. He conducted himself like a rioter. He was with the rioters, he was rioting with the rioters, and was embedded, deeply embedded in the rioting, and so he was rightly picked up and treated like a rioter. There were lots of other journalists. We didn't go after them.
In other words, those who were arrested were not arrested in the line of duty.
Absolutely. They crossed the line, probably moved away from where journalists were, and moved into the thick of the riots. Not to take pictures, not to cover the event, but to advance the rioting.
All right. Thank you very much, DCP. Professor Adibe, let's return to you with regard to this whole concept. I asked the question of Ayo a while ago. And given the situational report that we had, the entire Southeast, according to the DCP, the call was unheeded. In most parts of the North, the call also was unheeded. So if you're looking at the locations where the riots, where the protests took place, probably about 4 states, plus the Federal Capital Territory, isolated somewhere at the Human Rights Commission offices. Was there, in your opinion, unnecessary security attention paid to this in terms of drafting and mobilizing men and resources to contain what seemed to be, as some persons have also indicated, some fearful impression of a French Revolution at our doorstep?
Yeah, thank you, Kingsley. Let me just, before I answer that, let me very quickly address my brother's comment about peace. We must not also mistake peace for concurrence-seeking behavior, groupthink. What we call peace is built on a certain power configuration underneath. So if things are favoring you and you talk about peace, there are others that are contesting the underneath, the underlying power relations that sustain that peace. That's why if you are talking about peace in terms of concurrence-seeking behavior, groupthink, that nobody must deviate from what you consider to be a normal or, what is acceptable way of thinking or expressing oneself. That's not what we are thinking about. I actually believe that the police, have a duty to call Showore for questioning. Not just because of you talked about revolution. If you just mentioned revolution and left it, I wouldn't bother. But when you say something like the DSS will not exist, the government, they have a duty to call just to say, what do you mean by this? Not in a kind of show of muzzle. I mean, I'm happy you're a lawyer. Does he have the capacity to effectuate a threat of a revolution? And that's why I think we must start by trying to examine or interrogate what actually did he intend to achieve. Now, let me return to the question you asked, and which is to, you can remind me that question now.
Well, I would just say that, was there or has there been an overreaction by the security agencies?
Yes, that's what.
On the basis of, an examination, a simple examination of the capacity of the individual to carry out whatever linguistic threat he had issued with regard to a revolution now.
Yeah, I think also that's why people came up with a number of those conspiracy theories. If some of them are suspecting he had foreign backing, which I doubt, but I think also the government has this tendency of shooting itself on the foot. Why would you give surveillance, put Amnesty International on surveillance? By so doing, you mobilize the entire transnational NGOs against you. And then when you mismanage it and they start to lampoon you, you turn around to say the international communities are against you. This, for me, is, more or like Nnamdi Kanu when he was virtually nobody. And people just orchestrated him, put him in detention for too long, turned somebody who was nobody into something bigger than everybody. And that's the thing I hope that the police here should be very sensitive about. Many people will be. I don't think there was anybody who will be opposed in a normal times that you say something that it was more like he was looking to be martyred or to become the head of opposition, leader of the opposition group. You say something, he's a journalist of sorts, and he knows that if you say, I'm carrying out a revolution, it's okay. But the police will no longer exist by tomorrow. You will be called for questioning. At least they will say there are quite a number of very intelligent people in the police, not just people with, you can see Frank Mba and others. What exactly do you mean? And by just interrogating you and finding out that your capacity, you don't have that capacity, they let you go. But we are living in a society where once we deviate from the groupthink, the next you'll be hearing is, arrest him, arrest him. And when you arrest that person in the manner to satisfy those baying for the blood of their, sometimes their supposed ethnic or class enemies, you end up creating monster. And when we want to go to why are many people trying to support him? It's not because they are supporting Showore, in my own opinion, but because there are a number of bottled up feelings elsewhere, especially in the southern part of the country, where I believe the government has already in a kind of a crisis of legitimacy for other reasons. So when people come out, it's not because of Showore. I don't think it's because of that. It's because of other grouses they nurture against the government.
But I think you talked about conspiracy theory. There's no smoke without fire. I don't think somebody can just wake up in a country like Nigeria and decide to go on a revolution. We have shadow backers who come behind the scene to encourage these people. Okay, let's talk about other issues now. There have been so many instances in Nigeria where a revolution could have happened. Why now?
Okay, let me tell you what you call revolution. I personally don't believe revolution accomplishes anything in history. American Revolution, 1735, what did it accomplish apart from bringing the idea of republicanism in bankrupted France? French Revolution, what? Apart from bloodshed, it was not able to even enthrone representative government. What did it get? There's nothing it achieved that other countries did not. Revolution in Iran ended up radicalizing the Middle East. Arab Spring, where did it turn up to be?
Libya.
So it's not, we have had actually the closest equivalent of our revolution. And that was the time of Nzogwu. If you look at the statement they made, and Buhari in 1983. Remember Delegiwa in 1983, even when they arrested the politicians, respected Delegiwa was among those saying, just kill them off. Just 1 year down the line, it took just one book, Aton Zeribe's Nigeria Another Hope Betrayed, for people to turn against Buhari. And I can tell you, the labeling Buhari got from his rule in 1983 and the events that followed meant that he became the first leader, first one from the north of a major political party who never scored 25% votes in any part of the south until 2015. So in the end, it was a revolution. It could have been anybody's coup in 1983. So in Nzogwu's coup ended up triggering up a chain of events that led to a war. So many people are not really into that revolution as we say it. But we have had our own revolution. It's just a way of thinking. And they promise you, let me tell you, my brother, they came up in, if you read Vanguard of yesterday, they came up with a set of demands, which, if you read it, you know they are very simple. Just the same thing for Malta. They want fuel prices to return to 1999 level. They want you to abolish school fees in the universities. You know, revolution and mass movements, they thrive on simplistic messages that appeal to the emotions. And that's why sometimes you look at them and say, call them, they meet people who can talk to them one-on-one, intellect for intellect, and sooner than later the whole thing will just...
That's why, Dominic Alancha, we're asking you to take this again. Look, when you interrogate the slate of demands by the promoters of the Revolution Now idea, are these issues that ordinarily everyone should be frightened of and say, oh yeah, you know, the revolutionaries are right here now and they might be able to galvanize the rest of the country? As Professor Adibe said, when you look through the demands, first of all, it's like saying that by 12 o'clock, if I were to pronounce that, by 12 o'clock, we will no longer have a Nigerian police force, that DCP Frank Uba would have lost his rank. Is that possible?
Well, given the threat, you understand, it was possible. And that is why I would...
Which threat?
Yeah, he gave a threat. He
Verbal
said,
threat.
Of course. And he went further by appointing coordinators in various states that will lead this revolution. Are you aware of that? That there were coordinators in various states. Look, the police and DSS need to dig deep into this by arresting his collaborators because, look, In the video, Idris Abdul Karim was one of his conspirators. Why is he not arrested? Why is Idris Abdul Karim walking freely? He was in the video with him there. They only picked Sowore, you understand, leaving Idris Abdul Karim. Pictures were showing that he had a meeting with a fugitive, an enemy of the state in the US, Nnamdi Kalu. It was also in the media that he also had meetings with some powerful politicians in Dubai. Now, these are issues that the security agencies need to really investigate, because these are not issues that we will, joke with. These are issues that need to be nipped on the bud. And like Prof rightly said, you see, revolutions such as the one that Sowore claimed he wants to lead cannot achieve anything. And I think that is why Nigerians did not respond to him. Nigerians did not respond to him because there are factors also that could lead to a revolution such as the one that he's talking about. Social inequality, injustice, economic injustice, and stuff like that. And this administration, for the past 4 years, have done well enough, excellently well, by breaching the gap. It's a gradual process. Given the situation that we have found ourselves, in 2015. So Nigerians are understanding that, look, the gap is being breached. I was actively part of this electioneering campaign. I was in the villages. I was interacting with people, particularly women. Women were telling me that, look, because of the national social intervention programs, they are benefiting. They will vote in Buhari in order to continue with it. That their children today are in school, they are having school fees, money to pay their fees and all of that. There is a breach.
Hang on a second. Those were the women that were supposed also to have been mobilized for the revolution now.
Exactly.
No, I'm asking you because you must take that question.
That what?
I said those same women whom you canvassed 6 months or so ago, who expressed a great deal of delight with what was happening with the social intervention program and so on and so forth. Were they the same women who were now also to be mobilized by Sowore and other foreign backers?
Did you see them in the street? That means they rejected it. They were not mobilized for it. Yes. Even if they were mobilized for it, they knew that they cannot achieve anything and that this government is on the right track. The best they can do is to support the government.
So, Ayo, why don't we, as some persons have argued, keep this issue on the back burner and just proceed with other issues in our national life? Well, why the security agencies continue to do their work anyway?
Well, that's what I was going to say, that I think the press should not give this thing too much unnecessary attention. The security agencies have taken over, and I think we should let them do their job without too much of spotlight on this issue, because we tend to, I don't know why, but I think our press tend to play to the gallery too much. We tend to give too much spotlight to very frivolous and unnecessary issues, and we make them subject of importance. There are a lot of good things happening in Nigeria that we can highlight today, rather than some miscreant and people who are just misguided who want to create unnecessary drama. I don't think we need it. Well, talking about groupthink, like he said, I was in Egypt just a few weeks ago, and I remember when we were doing some of the tours, I spoke with my tour guide that I want to see the venue of the Arab Spring, and the man screamed at us, "Don't mention that here." Apparently, the Egyptians don't want to hear it again. And he told me clearly that it was a revolution they regretted. That because right now, it has given them what they never even wished for. They would have preferred to be where they were. So clearly it proves that revolution like these guys do, because they've read some books and they just want to create unnecessary drama, it has never changed anything good. It always changed one problem for the other. All you do is you remove people who you think were the allies that are enjoying the system for other new people to come and take over. It never make a significant change. The Egyptians today hate what happened during the Arab Spring because it has enthroned for them a government that has made their lives more difficult economically, socially. They are not happy as they are. And if you look at Libya, their neighbor there, those ones are still in turmoil. So many other countries that went on that Arab Spring today are in a mess. So clearly, when people wake up and want to create an utopian world, or is it utopian world, say, oh, revolution will change it. I mean, somewhere I came from America. Do they have free education in universities there? Well, if you want to talk about free education, we'll begin to look at the junior ones. And most states in Nigeria, if they're not doing free education at the primary or secondary school level, the prices are very, very easy to manage. But for university, in the US where it is, people don't get free education. In fact, they take loans to go to school. Most of them don't even pay off the loans till they die, because it's very expensive. University education is not supposed to be for everybody. It's supposed to be qualitative for whoever can afford it. By the time you chip in university education, you will find yourself where we are today. Most of our graduates can't even write their CVs. They have to pay people to help them write CV. It is that bad. So when somebody wakes up and says he wants to give free education to university for everybody, you realize this person is just a joker. So I think our press should stop giving too much attention and coverage to things that I will call mundane and unimportant issues, and let us focus on serious and more important issues, so that Nigerians can see where we are going as a country, not to entertain a bunch of jokers and class clowns.
You know, I remember reading up the Prime Minister of Libya saying that they wanted Gaddafi out, but they didn't know what they were going to do if Gaddafi leaves.
That is what happens. These guys never think through. That's what I was saying. That what are their demands? They don't think through these things. They just wake up and make very big and verbose speeches that will, I mean, when he was saying he would take DSS out, I'm sure he wasn't thinking. Because if he was thinking, he wouldn't even say that kind of nonsense in public. The man said he want to self-immolate. He should go and burn himself on the street and let's see. These guys just make statements that are completely devoid of sense and responsibility. If you are thinking responsibly, there are some things you will not say publicly.
Okay, coming to DSP.
Well, that's why,
yes.
Just sorry, before you take, I asked the question earlier that were we not faced with a case of just simple linguistic inflation?
Well, like I said earlier, two things. He has said it, we should investigate it. But clearly, when you now look at their set of demands, they just look like a bunch of jokers. So don't give them too much attention. Put them where they belong, at the back burner.
Okay, coming to DSP Uba now.
DCP.
DCP.
You know, he keeps smiling. Let him not arrest you.
Don't be smiling too much.
If you go to Fountain, Fountain.
No, don't worry.
Where's the fountain?
Unity Fountain.
Okay, I would never go there except for
journalists enjoy this unqualified freedom and privileges. Just ride on that special privilege.
Okay, DCP Uba, Professor Gideofo said arresting these people, putting them behind bars for a long time, give them a certain level of prominence and importance. So what's going to happen in this case now? Can we have a sneak view of when will he be taken to court? What are the procedures that will be followed? Is he going to stay there for a long time and build on staying in prison, which is connections and everything? What's going to happen actually?
Okay, let me just run through a few things. Kinsley has asked this question repeatedly about linguistic inflation. And for me, I come from a part of Nigeria where we have a saying that a man's spoken words are a clear manifestation of his innermost thoughts. And you can't take a journey into any man's heart except by either his spoken words or his acts or his omissions. And so when a man speaks, you need to take his spoken words very seriously. You could investigate and then find out that he was actually a joker, but at the first instance, you need to take those words seriously. Because if you presume, if you proceed on the assumption that he was joking, and he turns out not to be joking, then you probably would have messed a whole lot of things up. A whole lot of young people, or even a whole lot of citizens that we know eventually committed suicide, for example, had threatened that they were going to take their own lives. But people never took them seriously. They have verbalized their innermost intentions, casually sometimes, and people thought they were just joking. And so when this young man began to speak in the manner he was speaking and began to conduct himself in the manner he was conducting himself, we needed to step in. But the honest truth is that for us as law enforcement agents, we just wanted to do our job quietly. The only reason why the police issued a statement was because we needed to advise parents and guardians to speak to their words and advise their words or restrain their words, not to be allowed to be used as tools. And so we had no other way of reaching out to the millions of parents and millions of guardians out there other than to issue a statement. Other than that, we probably would have just gone ahead to do our job quietly. So I can't but agree that sometimes the reportage and the manner in which not just the mainstream media, but of course even the social media push agendas and narratives actually sometimes throw up things larger than they are. For us as members of the law enforcement community, this is something we deal with. It does not disrupt our normal activities. Policing activities were going on smoothly at the stations level, area commands level, command headquarters level. We're carrying out major operations yesterday, going after kidnappers, going after cultists. It never disrupted our chain of events, our activities. On the issue of how long he's going to be in detention, you know clearly that my brother, Dr. Ifnanya, came out clearly to say that he's in the custody of the DSS. So I won't be speaking for them, but I also know that they will proceed with this case expeditiously. I am sure the DSS will not want to make him become the kind of celebrity he's craving to be, and his matter will be dealt expeditiously. I'm sure they are working on that.
Okay, thank you very much, DCP Franco. Back again to Professor Jideofor Adibe. You know, when an event breaks like this, you find all kinds of commentators expressing their views on what is playing out. Some of the comments that you may also have heard include the fact that, or the claim that this is either the commencement of a crackdown on the opposition or indeed a crackdown on dissent. That's one leg. Second leg following from that is the claim also that this is a clawback on Chapter 4 provisions with regard to the right of assembly and in particular freedom of expression. Freedom of expression not just mean by word of mouth, but by organizing protest. Is this anywhere near the truth, in your perspective?
Let me just say this. In free speech jurisprudence, I'm happy you all to are lawyers, there is what is called clear and imminent danger. So if somebody makes a threat, say in US or English jurisprudence, the first is how credible is that threat? So it must pass that clear and imminent. Does he have any soldiers, group soldiers? Doesn't command any soldiers. The law enforcement agencies will probably surreptitiously find out, is anybody backing him, any one of substance? If not, they'll just, maybe you just really go because they don't want to create. And that's precisely the reason where if you go abroad, hate groups like British National Party, like the Ku Klux Klan, they are never banned. Why? Despite what they say. Nobody's shouting, arrest them, because you don't want to drive them underground. And you don't want to turn them into unnecessary celebrities. And I think this is one of the lessons we have to learn about crisis management better. So who is the winner in all this? I think Sowore has won. Because the kind of attention he has now, he's never received it before. And on this, let me briefly address my brother's comment, because these are some of the underlying bases at which people are, quite unhappy with the regime. It is not true. for him to say that the gaps, income gaps are bridging, that this government is doing wonderfully. I mean, it's doing okay in some areas. But according to the World Poverty Clock, June 2018, 87 million Nigerians are in multidimensional poverty, absolute poverty, where they subsist in less than $1.90 a day. Now, earlier this year, for us to know if there's any improvement, earlier this year, the same World Poverty Clock came up again and said 4 million additional Nigerians had joined the extreme poverty club, meaning we are close to 92 million extremely poor Nigerians. So it's not bridging. At the same time, we are told that every minute, 6 Nigerians are joining the extreme poverty club. So if you take it side by side by the claim by the presidency that it lifted 5 million Nigerians out of poverty, which some people are celebrating, and match it by the data that in 1 year, 4 million people were added into the extreme poverty club, and you said in 4 years, you lifted 5 million, which means you are able to lift 1,250,000 people per year. The gap is huge. And that is even accepting the government figures on face value, because we have not interrogated its methodology.
I'm wondering, Professor Adibe, and I'm sure others will also speak to this. We're going to let you go now because we know that you have some other engagements. So I'll probably just drop this, and then at some other point, because we'll get you on the program from time to time. When sometimes we are evaluating our national circumstance, yes, the president is the head of state, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and he leads the federal government. But when you have 90-something or 80-something or whatever figure it is of Nigerians who are in extreme poverty, those persons come from local governments, and we have 774 of them. What dent have those local governments made in reducing poverty? We have 36 states, and each of these tiers of government that I've listed also have their own impact, or have their own rules constitutionally assigned in terms of managing the political economy. But unfortunately, the figures are not ascribed to these other tiers of government. It is the president, who takes all of that. So, Professor Adibe, I know that this is an issue that I could open up, but you know that we will have to let you go now because you have some other engagements. I'd like to thank you for being around on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now.
Thank you so much for staying with Good Morning Nigeria. Now we have some tweets coming in to the program. First, I start with Festus Akimboyewa. He says, we do not want the revolution that connotes rebellion, uprising, chaos, turmoil, and overthrow of our legitimate government. The stability of our constitution and hard-won democracy should be the priority of all Nigerians. Government should impose strict measures to curb the activities of troublemakers.
Shwaibu Alkali tweets, revolution cannot be a solution to our present situation except prayer.
And Ibrahim Modu Aji tweets, the tagging of the so-called protest revolution is quite frightening, undemocratic and capable of undermining the national peace and security as the revolutionary call depicts. Nigerians can't afford another civil unrest with the couple of insecurity in the country.
Now, this is coming from our boss here. It says, revolution is a fascist word which connotes sowing trouble and overthrowing every reasonable and good thing. It is not democratic. The present state of the country started 40 years ago. With patience, this government will help us out. Showore is seeking attention, and I hope he repents. That's according to Abosode, by the way.
Yes, and Yahaya Wada tweets, good morning, crew. Frankly, I'm impressed with the level of proactiveness and professionalism on the part of our security agencies, especially the police. We are not in a banana republic where somebody, after losing election, would resort to causing turmoil.
And Danladi Undayebo tweets, protests are okay in a democracy, but if Shawara is calling for forceful takeover of government, then the right thing for government to do is to put him on trial for treason.
And Hussein tweets, whatever guise revolution is defined, the result is catastrophic to any society, and it has not been a solution to any nation problem. Look around. The nations that have resorted to solve their problems through revolution, how did it help them? Shaware should be treated as a copyist.
Usman Banikantu tweets, now the pronouncement that the DSS will be extinct is devoid of ambiguity. They are out with their collaborators to cause chaos and seize power. Just like what the ex-president Bush, that's the second, said, you are either with the government or with the terrorists. They must be charged accordingly. And
Elijah Oko-Oga tweets, nothing should be taken for granted, not even Shaware.
Okay, those are some of the tweets I would like to take in the meantime. Dominic Alancha, I mean, you've expressed your views with regard to what needs to be done, but after today or beyond this moment, what would you like to see?
Well, after today, what I would like to see is that which the police and the security agencies have demonstrated is proactiveness. And the important aspect of this is that it's going to serve as a deterrent. It will not serve as a deterrent if Shaware remain in detention. It will serve as a deterrent if he's prosecuted. One of the things that we need to begin to do is reward and punishment mechanism. People are not punished in this country when they choose to be deviants. People go scot-free, most time when they choose to be deviant, and that is why, some of these miscreants are rising, threatening us with the word like revolutions and stuffs like that. So I would like to see a situation where, there will be proactiveness, and that proactiveness will lead to, to serve as a deterrence to upcoming younger ones. And good enough, Nigerian youths are beginning to align themselves with, good behaviors, values, and principles that will bring about progress and development of this country. And the government also need to do more. It's not as if there are no shortcomings. There are shortcomings, but like I always said, it's a gradual process. We cannot find ourselves in a perfect situation, within 4 years. It's going to be a gradual process. But in doing that, there is need for, Nigerians to be supportive of the government so that we can together progressively move to where we want Nigeria to be.
You're asking for his trial.
Of course.
But what would be the offenses?
Treason, of course. Treason. He has said it that there won't be DSS. Like I said earlier, he said that he's leading a revolution. Revolution means rebellion. It therefore means that you want to rebel against the state. And he has gone ahead to appoint coordinators in various states. In Lagos, there is a coordinator. In Osun, there is a coordinator. And in other places, there are coordinators. For God's sake, the police and the security agency, DSS, they need to investigate. There are collaborators behind this man.
They said he came back 2 weeks ago from the U.S.
Yes.
How did he do all these things so fast?
We are in the ICT world. I can sit in Abuja here and appoint people, across the world and local government. During the electioneering campaign, I don't want to go into that. I have coordinators through WhatsApp, through Twitter that we appoint, to push on certain advocacy for the campaign. So it's something that I can sit in the U.S. and know what is happening here. He has contact with people across the country.
Dominic Alancha, let's also clarify this for the benefit of our viewers. Treason, DCP Franco Bai said, treason is a very serious offense.
Very serious offense.
And if you can step it down and say treasonable felony. But you are saying treason. And even some persons are already arguing against treasonable felony. But you are saying treason. Anyway, but as I said, we'll have the opportunity of returning to that. Let's bring in Ayo one more time. In terms of what you would like to see going forward, I know you've already talked about the fact that the media should turn off the oxygen that, is energizing the conveners or the promoters of the revolution now idea. But beyond that, in terms of workaday issues, what would you like to see?
In terms of?
Workaday issues, everyday things.
Okay,
Yes.
First and foremost, it hurts me that Prof has left. You see, we were talking about figures of in terms of poverty. Somebody says 97 million people are poor, and in 6 minutes, every one person. If that happens, all of us will have become very poor. So if you don't interrogate that kind of figure, why does it bother you when the president said they have lifted 5 million? You now want to complain about that, but you don't want to complain that it makes no sense that in 6 minutes, one person is getting. Then if that happens, all of us.
1 minute, 6 people.
Okay, 1 minute, 6 people. In 1 minute, 6 people. So by now, every Nigerian should be poor, extremely poor. So if these figures don't bother you.
And your look doesn't suggest that you are poor.
Same way yours doesn't.
It doesn't.
So it tells you that some of these figures that are bandied around are political in nature, and many people don't understand the political economy of the world. The truth remains that there are two blocks, the East and the West. The West always had the preeminence in the past. And right now the East is rising. The Asian tigers are rising, and there is a clash. You can see what is happening between Trump and China. Now, political economy suggests that the West wants to keep their dominance, which is fading, fast fading. Now, if you are not aligned with them, they will throw everything at you using their own agency, which is what I call the Bretton Woods agency, from the World Bank to the IMF. They will tell you everything that will scare you as long as you're not aligning with them. And if you remember, our former Minister of Finance said something, that we will not take your medication. We will look for our own local medication. From that moment, Nigeria had aligned mostly with the East, which is with China. Therefore, these figures will be thrown at us to scare us so that we can come to the IMF. Now, people who don't understand this will sit down and tell us in 1 minute 6 Nigerians are poor, and all of us are not yet poor. By now, the entire 200 million Nigerians should be poor.
Okay, well, Ayo, both Ayo, I mean, I don't want to ask Discipline this question. Both Dominic and Ayo, you have raised the issue that Sowore, who is the, shall we say, convener-in-chief of the hashtag Revolution Now, contested the presidential election in February this year.
And March.
And he lost the election, and that trying to instigate a revolution is not the proper way, that he should wait for another round of election or he should go to court. Is there a suggestion, therefore, that if somebody loses an election, his rights under Chapter 4 are thereby curtailed, right to say freedom of expression and freedom of assembly and freedom of association, bearing in mind, of course, that there are boundaries around these freedoms?
Well, we should understand that freedom comes with responsibility too. If you want to protest and you want to associate with people, you have every right to. So I can call for civil disobedience based on issues. But the moment there is an hint of what will destabilize the normal setup of things, which could be violent in nature, then it becomes, it crosses a line. And then when you cross that line, because for me, I want to be able to get in my car and go from point A to point B without any guy carrying a stick or machete or something chasing me all over the street. So the moment you cross that line, then you are no longer talking like a political opposition. You have become maybe a militia leader. And that is what we can't afford to play with. So I think Sowore crossed the line in that area. He has every right to protest, but I don't think he wanted to protest. What he was saying is that he wants to change the order of things, which connotes, because he couldn't get it through the ballot box, he wants to get it violently and forcefully.
Dominic?
Yes, you see, Buhari contested election 4 times before he became a president. Each time he failed, he goes back to the drawing board, re-strategize, do a SWOT analysis and see areas he needs to improve, his areas of weakness and stuff like that. And luckily enough for him, in 2015, he came on board again and he won the election. Revolution like the one Sowore is trying to lead by violently, taking over is not the best way of ascending to power. the best way of ascending to power in a democratic setting like ours, like Nigeria, is through the ballot box. So I think he has a network, he has a platform where he can even reach out to more Nigerians. The Sahara news of a thing. He can, through that, you know, do his advocacies, conscientize Nigerians, enlighten Nigerians, you understand? You know, rather than coming out to say he wants to lead a violent revolution. I believe Nigerians I also interact with some Nigerians, and they are saying, where is the man living? Is he in Nigeria or New York? He should come and live in Nigeria, then he will be faced with the realities. And let me say something about what the poverty issue of it. You see, we should look at internal realities. We should judge our progress based on our own internal realities and not based on external realities like all these international NGOs will come and say Nigeria. I mean, it's quite unbelievable.
Okay, thank you. I just, Discipline Frankumba, one aspect, to the extent that, you can speak around the issue, law enforcement has become quite challenging for us. And what we have also witnessed in the past has been the hijack of protests. Otherwise, peaceful protests get infiltrated by all kinds of rogue elements, and then trouble escalates. Against the background of what has also been reported as the proliferation of small arms and light weapons and all kinds of elements rampaging all over the place, is this necessarily a conducive time to try to organize a march or a protest of the nature contemplated even by the conveners of #RevolutionNow, assuming they didn't even intend a violent overthrow of the existing order?
I can but agree with you that law enforcement has actually become increasingly challenging. The globalization of the world, as well as the strong impacts of internet, ICT, the social media, and the rest of modern technology have even made it even more complicated and more challenging. For us, beyond the fact that this protest or this movement started out as a revolution march, we also figured out that for people who are very sensitive to national unity, for those who are very sensitive to peace and order, the timing is also suspect. We just came out of a situation in Abuja where there are back-to-back protests by a particular sect that led to massive damage of public property. An agency like NEMA that is statutorily charged with even providing emergency relief. Should there even be a protest and one of the protesters is injured, NEMA is even the agency that will attend to the protester. Yet, those violent protesters choose NEMA as a soft target, setting ablaze its outposts, setting ablaze its ambulance that should or could have been deployed to even assist them should any of them fall down. And that shows the senselessness of such protests. The protesters also attempted to forcefully invade the National Assembly. The National Assembly, for me, the parliament is actually the biggest and the most visible symbol of democracy worldwide. Once you're able to squeeze the parliament out of existence, then there is no democracy. And in an attempt to do that, they damage a lot of property. There are videos showing them climbing on moving vehicles and smashing the windscreens, attacked law enforcement agents, injured so many of them. The peak was when a deputy commissioner of police and an armed deputy commissioner of police who tried to exercise caution and restraint and tried to engage them was killed. I'm not talking of the youth corporal that lost his life. And then we're still trying to get over these complications, and then someone is calling yet for a revolution. So timing, very poor. The use of the word revolution, the kind of statements that were issued subsequently, the threats and the intensity of the threats. These are all factors that we reviewed holistically. Of course, plus other intelligence information at our disposal, which we will not discuss here. And these were the reasons why we initiated some of the proactive measures that we did.
Exactly. Coming to Mr. Dominic Alancha, I want to ask you a very specific question. Discussing this topic with some people yesterday, trying to get an insight into the situation. Some people said in Nigeria, the moment a crisis is trying to wind down, another one comes up. It's as if we're being kept on our toes 24 hours a day with crises and ideologies that has nothing to do with the state of our nation. Why does that happen? And our youth are, gullible. They are usually, taken into this ideology. Are we looking at a generation that would not listen to elders? A generation that would go all out to destabilize the country? What is happening?
Well, I don't think so. I think that some certain individuals, sit back and see areas they can take advantage and then gain popularity negatively. And that is what Sowore is trying to do, by acquiring some negative popularity. People are saying, ignore him if you ignore. Look, if you ignore him, he will grow to a monster. Like the commissioner said here, if you ignore him and it turns out that his threat becomes real, it do more damage, and more harm. It's better to arrest the situation now. So I think some certain individuals, like Sowore, try to take advantage, but good enough Nigerian youth shunned him. Nigerians ignored him because they know that revolution will not take us anywhere, And some of the issues that led to some of these things is actually governance. And I think we are doing good, you understand? It's a gradual process. In the next 8 years, like APC and President Muhammadu Buhari has promised, we'll be in the next level.
Dominic Alancha, public affairs analyst, would like to thank you for being part of our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
Appreciation also to Ayo Oyalowo, who is a political economist. Thank you for being around.
Good morning. Thank you.
And Ayo, of course, is a clear evidence that poverty has its limits in Nigeria.
with his fresh beard.
Yeah, absolutely. Luxuriant beards. It looks more like a revolutionary actually, with his Castro-like beards. If we have Ayo's shots now, we'll see. Yeah, absolute bourgeois revolutionary, like Karl Marx, by the way. Yes, and all the other persons. DCP.
I'm not wearing it.
No. Well, your beret is out because you have a DCP, Frank Uba. Always a delight having you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And thank you for your comments, and we wish you the very best, of course, in helping to effectively police the country.
Thank you.